we don't have a fucking crystal ball here on the walk-off. We're just a couple of bonehead comedians that love baseball more than we probably should. So we made it to the All-Star break, buddy, and home run derby last night. Holy cow. Did you watch it?
Of course. What else was I going to do on a Monday night?
It was... I can't think of another home run derby that I enjoyed more than this derby. It was phenomenal.
I can. It was 2019. I was living in Penhold, Alberta, and I watched Vladdy hit like 1,000 home runs. That one was pretty fun to watch, too.
No, it was pretty darn fun to watch. But honestly, this one was so much...
Other than Vladdy in 2019, This was fun in like every matchup in every round. The whole Albert Pujols story. It was so wild,
man. Like the Albert Pujols story. Yeah. It's funny when Pujols hit 14 home runs in that first round. I was messaging my buddy and I was like, okay, I've seen the first round. I'd counted them out. I was like, Schwarber's going to hit more than this for sure.
Yeah.
What a roller coaster ride of emotions. What a fun, well set up home run derby. Like, the MLB does so few things right, and boy did they do this right, buddy. Like Julio Rodriguez, just 21-year-old phenom, put on a frickin' show, man. Like, wow. He had 63 home runs in the first 2 rounds?
Yeah.
And then lost? Like,
very nice.
Unreal. Kind of reminded me of the Vladdy home run derby, right? Where he had more home runs at the end of the whole thing than Pete Alonso, but just tuckered himself out for that 3rd round.
Yeah, it's too bad.
And of course, Juan Soto wins it, right? The guy that every single person in baseball is talking about right now.
Well, I was kind of thinking, like, honestly, if I was the Washington Nationals and I was wanting to trade Juan Soto, I'm surprised they even let him in. You know, like his trade value is astronomical. And guess what? We'll get into that. But
yes,
if he pulls something, swings too hard, gets a lat strain or something, right? All of a sudden, if you're the Nationals, you're crapping your pants.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
No, even when you watched all the boys out there with their massagers, right? And they're just like, you're like, oh man, like, it's taking it out of them. Like, to swing for the fences, like they were swinging for the fences, like, unreal. I loved, too, how it started. Like, Julio's the first guy up and just hammers.
Sets the tone.
33 bombs? Like, buddy. Anyways, welcome everybody to the mailbag. This isn't really what this show is for. I'm Scott Belford, joined as always by the best co-host in the biz, Adam Mack. We go through all of your comments and interaction each week for the Monday morning mailbag on a Tuesday afternoon. So this is what we're doing. But we had to start with a little bit of home run derby talk because, oh my goodness, what a fun little display that was last night. Of course, the All-Star game goes today. Looking forward to that. Get to see Alejandro Kirk and Vladdy start things off. Go ahead, jump in.
But now imagine that this All-Star weekend also had like a fastest man in the league competition.
Oh,
and you got to watch like Bobby Witt Jr. just, I don't know if it's a straight line to first or if it's like a full lap around the bases, but man.
Couldn't agree more. And we've talked about this lots, buddy, right? And how cool would a skills comp be in baseball? But again,
I'm just talking myself into it because everyone's worried about injuries, but like injuries can happen to the home run derby too, but we still do that. So I don't know. If you can't run hard without getting injured, stay home.
Yeah. You don't let George Springer in that competition.
For this dive contest.
Okay, gang. A big thank you to all of you for the likes, the subscribes. Our subscriptions are up, so we do really appreciate you all taking the time to do so. All of our audio listeners, thank you so much. We get so much interaction from our audio listeners who actually need to go to a different platform. Like, that's where so many of our DMs on Instagram and Twitter come from, is the audio side of things. So a big thank you to all of you. You can, of course, reach out to us on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast, on Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast. Discord grows every single day. That is always free. and that is just a big group of rabid Jays fans constantly talking baseball and Blue Jays. There's going to be a link in the show notes that you can join there. And, of course, we always appreciate on YouTube when you drop a comment, whether it is meant for mailbag or you're just helping support the channel. It's all appreciated. Okay, let's get into it. I guess we should give a tip of the hat to our Patreon as well. I'll let you do that.
I guess.
I guess.
So patreon.com/The Walk Off Podcast. Big thanks to David, Abraham, Michael, Sarah, John, Simon, Rashid, Joshua, Jeremy, Ian, Dunedin, Bob, John, and Wyatt. And we have a question from Wyatt today, so we'll get to that as well. So priority comments in the mailbag.
In the Patreon.
From the Patreon. So there you go. Okay, let's get to it.
Okay, so I'm touring the East Coast right now. Had a great show in St. John, New Brunswick at Punchlines Comedy Club. If you are a New Brunswicker and you're listening and you haven't been to Punchlines, you absolutely need to. It's just such a cool gem of a club that's hidden. It's just like this secret, beautiful club in Eastern Canada. But I actually had a gentleman who has been following the show all along. New Brunswick, Canada guy is his handle. Yeah, and he came out to the show. He said to give you a hello, Adam. And
okay, I hope you bought New Brunswick, Canada guy a beer.
A beer, as promised, always. You know it.
Very good. Very good. How's this hidden comedy club compared to, let's say, a certain bowling alley comedy club in Red Deer? All right.
Like one of those exponentially better. Like,
Right? Yeah. There's no pins in the background. There's no arcade sounds and kids walking in to get more nachos. Got it. Gotcha.
It's always beautiful to play a place that doesn't have VLT. Buddy. That's always a big win.
Yes. All right, let's get to some comments now. First one comes in from
let's get it. Yeah, sorry.
From Tanya Loves Baseball. Says, "Hey guys, hope all is well. What the heck happened on Friday? Was there no podcast? I can't find it. I always listen on the audio side. Is it just on YouTube this week?"
Okay, so long story short, I had a show in Moncton on Thursday. Was staying in a really crappy hotel, and I was up at 11 Eastern time, which meant that Adam had to be up super early, 8 a.m. for this on the West Coast. I'm hungover. I didn't feel like doing it at all. Adam was up way too early. We laid down an hour podcast.
It was great.
And then
one of our best ones.
Fantastic. Anyways, long story short, after Adam went to do some editing on it, and the internet connection in the hotel was just so shitty that we were like, if we post this, it's going to drive all of you absolutely insane. So that's just...
It was good for like 3 minutes, and then you would just hear me going, "I didn't hear any of that, Scott. Can you repeat yourself?" And I had to do that like 12 times in the episode, and it just was not going to be a good listening or viewing experience, so we just decided to scrap it. So bad internet, unfortunately. That's how the work on the road goes when you're in a hotel sometimes. So
one of those secret episodes you'll never get to see, gang. But
it's right up there with our...
put in the work.
It's right up there with the quality of the first Chavez Young interview. Do you remember that one? I don't think we ever published that one either. But
no,
we did get him back on a second time with good internet, and that was a good conversation.
Yes.
So
yes.
Okay. Next one comes from...
We are getting better, though, at knowing when you folks will roast us in the comments for poor quality. So
actually, speaking of which, related to this, Simon in Discord ranked his favorite Jays media. So number 1 is At the Letters with Arden and Ben. Number 2... Number 2 is The Walk Off, very kind. Number 3 is Blair and Barker. I would have Blair and Barker too, but okay. And then number 4 was McCown, just for the laughs and terrible takes recently. But he does clarify that and he tagged me in this post, so you know he means business. If Adam would not forget to hit the record so often, The Walk Off would be number 1. So shots fired, but we appreciate it, Simon. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. We do have dozens of comments on the Charlie Montoyo firing. There's basically 4 angles you could take on this. It was either overdue and it was a good timing, or it was bad and Charlie was just the scapegoat. or Atkins is an idiot, or okay, now it's time for Atkins to step up and shine. Those are the 4 basic takes. You land somewhere in that spectrum. For me, it's Atkins' time to step up. Yep. I'm expecting
I couldn't agree more.
Magic at this trade deadline and over the next 2 weeks. Really, I don't want to wait till the deadline to see some stuff coming in. But we did get a couple genuine seeming comments and questions asking for an explanation on why Charlie was fired. It seems unfair. So maybe we could just address
I think
why.
I think one of the things to keep in mind whenever a coach or a manager is fired is that from the time a baseball manager is hired until they're fired, it's just a ticking clock, right? Yeah. Like, it's going to happen. And when times get tough, it's never the general manager that's going to take all of that responsibility and all of that pushback from the fans and put it on himself, right? Like, Ross Atkins may be the one who is to blame for where this team is at, but he was just given a new contract. He's not going to fire himself. What's the easiest thing for a boss to do? It's to fire the middle management and blame them. And I think that is a little bit of what happened. Charlie was a little bit of a scapegoat here. Not saying that there weren't very valid reasons why Charlie maybe wasn't the guy for this team going forward. And it's like Adam said right off the top, right? There were 4 general takes on this, and all of them were a little right.
Yep.
Like, that's the truth, right?
Yep.
This isn't all on Charlie by any means. But also, it's a little bit on Charlie.
Yeah.
And Ross Atkins is feeling the pressure, which isn't a bad thing.
This is a good point.
It means that this team is a contender and this fan base is ready for a winning Toronto Blue Jays season, whatever that is in your opinion. In my opinion, if they don't make it to the ALCS, this is a little disappointing.
Yeah, I'd agree with you.
Anything to add on that? Like,
no, just other than to say that, like, in professional sports, Charlie Montoyo isn't the first manager or head coach who was fired that didn't necessarily deserve to be. But
exactly. Just the way it goes.
Deserved to be and was it necessary, I think, are 2 important
Very
distinctions.
Different. Great point.
I do think it's important to say didn't necessarily deserve it, but I would say it was necessary. Something needed to be done. All right, so let's leave that there then. Next one comes in from Twitter. Big Bad Blue Jays on Twitter DM'd us and said, "Hey boys, loved Long Toss on Sunday." By the way, we had 8 on the panel for Long Toss this Sunday. Great episode. Was hoping maybe you could answer this on the mailbag. Ben Joyce throws 105, and the Jays passed on him several times in the draft. The Angels finally picked him. I think it was a mistake by the Blue Jays. What do you guys think?
This is interesting, and actually we had some talk about this in our Discord as well. I think one of the big things to keep in mind when it comes to Ben Joyce, 21-year-old kid, fireballer. There aren't many guys out there who do what he is doing. I think Aroldis Chapman in his youth is probably the last one who is out there averaging 102, 103 miles an hour and would touch 105. Like, it's insane, the fastball on this kid. And don't think MLB front offices didn't notice. Obviously, the Blue Jays were aware of this kid, as were the other 29 teams. Perspective is a lot, though, right? And it's important to keep in perspective that he was considered a reliever. This isn't a guy who is going to be a starter in the big leagues. This is a dude who's going to be in the bullpen. That automatically brings his value down. It is so rare. I can't even remember a reliever being drafted in the first 2 rounds. And please, feel free, all you watching here, if you've got one in mind, put it in the comments. We'd love to bring it up next time. But it doesn't happen often. Another thing to keep in mind, obviously the scouting around Major League Baseball was very active with this kid. And in my opinion, I haven't heard anyone come out and say this, but in my opinion, he's not ready for the big leagues. So all of these thoughts of grabbing Ben Joyce and just sticking him in the Blue Jays bullpen to have that fireballer, he's obviously more of a thrower and not a pitcher. And what I mean by that is he's a guy who, can rear back and throw 105 miles an hour. But if he's not hitting his spots all the time, it doesn't matter how fast you're throwing. If you're going to walk guys, if your whip is high, it doesn't matter. And there's a big jump between college ball and Major League Baseball. And I think that it was just kind of established amongst front office scouting that he's not ready. So if he's not ready, you're going to take the best available player at the slot and not worry about trying to force your hand on this kid. That's my opinion anyways. Anything to add, Adam?
I mean, you pointed out that he's a reliever. You don't typically draft a guy who's destined for the bullpen. The cliche is relievers are just failed starters, right? You draft a starter, didn't work out. Nate Pearson goes to the bullpen, figures it out. That's the progression. Just to point out here, in 2020, Ben Joyce, 20 and 2/3 innings, give up 14 walks and 11 earned runs, but struck out 35 batters. So he is like a control issue, but when he finds the zone, he's untouchable. This reminds me of Major League, Charlie Sheen, Wild Thing, right? Like, remember in that movie, I know we did a movie review on this, but like how like, oh my God, this is so unbelievably fast when he's throwing and the radar gun's like 97, 98, 99. And you're like, what? He's throwing 99? Oh, the good old days of baseball. Yeah, I would say with Ben Joyce, though, was it a mistake by the Jays? I'm going to err on the side of these teams probably know what they're doing. If 30 teams passed on him twice, probably for a reason. So,
and who knows? Maybe had he come around again in that third round, the Jays did have him on their radar. But again, when it comes to relievers, so rare to see them take up one of those top two rounds.
Okay. Next comment, and thank you for that one. Big Bad Blue Jays. So the next one comes in from our Patreon. Wyatt is getting 2 comments in because Patreon gets priority. So there. So Wyatt says, hey guys, love the show. Recently discovered the walk-off and became a Patreon to show my support for the channel. I like to listen to you guys along with Blair and Barker and at the letters when I'm driving. And I was hoping to get your take on 2 topics of discussion. So we'll address each of these one at a time. The first one is, if Groshans, Martinez, or Lopez are not pieces in some kind of trade before the deadline this year, do you think that is a sign that the Jays will not be looking to keep Bo or Chapman over the next few years?
That's interesting. I like Otto Lopez. I don't see him as a everyday major league player, and I hope he stuffs it down my throat. I hope that it's not like I'm a scout with the Blue Jays and watching this kid play all the time. This is just me going over his fan graphs and his stat cast and just like being a little bit of an analytic nerd and looking at what he's doing.
Sure.
That said, Groshans and Martinez, both highly touted prospects in this Blue Jays organization, and I think that we could watch them packaged in some sort of deal. We kind of touched on this when we were talking about Charlie Montoyo being fired, right? It's Atkins' time to put up or shut up. So we're going to see what happens here. And Wyatt, I think you're correct. If we don't see them packaged, does that mean that we can expect maybe a Matt Chapman to not be re-signed? And Adam and I have talked about this, right? Like, Adam, you don't feel Chapman is coming back, right?
No, I think it's 2 years. Thanks for your services. Yeah. Good luck in Texas.
And he's been phenomenal. He's been such a wall at third base, if you will.
Okay, can we talk Matt Chapman for a second and just kind of get lost in the weeds here? Because I keep seeing, like, there's discussions constantly in Discord, which I just have to tune out because the rhetoric is Matt Chapman has been bad defensively this year. And they tout the UZR and the DRS and the OAA and a bunch of stats that nobody knows what they mean. How do you feel about Matt Chapman's defense? Because, I mean, if you look at those categories, the UZR, I don't know what that even fucking stands for, ultimate zone rating, DRS, defensive run saved, OAA, outs above average. I think I got all three of those.
Yeah, you did.
If they're not adjusted for weather, I don't care. And that I want to be put on my gravestone, okay? I hate all these stats that, I mean,
so sometimes we
look at statistics. No, sometimes we look at statistics and we treat it like it's a science. Like it's not a science. It's a pseudoscience, right? It's like it's like we're taking like a glimpse of as many factors as we can and then trying to figure out how to value each thing and how, you know, like I get that they're maybe more accurate than simply looking at, you know, fielding percentage, which is how many balls were hit your way and how many errors did you commit, right? And that's basically how fielding percentage is calculated. So I get that it's an attempt to be like, okay, but it factors in like a person's range and how many balls they got to, and like it doesn't encapsulate it. I'm sorry, but like I've yet to, other than the first like 4 weeks of the year where Matt Chapman kind of seemed to be adjusting to the new team and whatever, since then I've zero complaints defensively.
I can't disagree with you. I truly think Matt Chapman has been honestly a godsend for this team. I think that they are so much stronger on the left side of the infield than they ever were in the last couple years. And I want to bring up something that friend of the show Blake Murphy from Sportsnet 590 The Fan brought up when he was on the show. And that is, it's almost disadvantageous to guys with exceptional range when it comes to some of these defensive stats, because they are getting to balls that a lot of guys without that sort of range don't get to.
You just go, oh, that's a base hit down the line.
It's just a base hit down the line. So that stat would be against the pitcher.
It's just a double. Someone just doubled it down the line, whereas Matt Chapman gets to it, doesn't throw him out. So it's like, well, it's a base hit that he didn't have
first.
Right.
Exactly. So I think that's part of these defensive metrics. I think there is something to be said for a little bit of the eye test when it comes to the hot corner.
Like, how many times have we seen a hard hit ball hit at Matt Chapman where, like, Kevin Biggio last year, lucky if we get him thrown out at one, and then, meanwhile, Chapman is, like, throwing across his body to second, and we're getting a double play out of it. Like, shut the fuck up about Matt Chapman not being a great third baseman. You can complain about his batting average if you want. It's coming up, for one. The power's there. I think he's, like, third or fourth on the team in home runs. And that glove is phenomenal, and I don't care.
Now, I know I lean a little bit more analytically than you do, Adam, and I do see value in the defensive metric stats. There are value there, and I think that when you are looking at a front office acquiring players, that it is important to take in the whole picture, and those defensive metrics matter.
You know who has top 10 defensive metrics in Major League Baseball? Kevin Smith. That's who we traded for Matt Chapman. I mean, he's playing in AAA right now. He got sent down. You're going to tell me Matt Chapman's a better third baseman or Kevin Smith is a better third baseman than Matt Chapman? Like, there's a flaw in the metrics if we're saying Kevin Smith is a better defensive third baseman than Matt Chapman. Even in an off year, I'll take Matt Chapman over Kevin Smith.
And this is where looking at the big picture goes a long ways. And again, I'm not throwing out those defensive metric stats with the bathwater, if you will. You know, like, obviously there is a reason they exist. There is a reason front offices value those. But I think there is a reason also why Matt Chapman is on this Blue Jays team, right? And he could still win a Gold Glove. Like, just because he gets to more balls than most third basemen doesn't mean that his defensive metrics should play against him.
When I shit on stats like WAR, and you know how I feel about wins above replacement as a stat, and I often call it a vibe. It's not a stat, right? And I know that there is a calculation to it, right? And it factors in like every aspect of a player's game, right? But then there are things like positional balancing ratios, where it's like, well, whatever a person's stats were, those exact same stats for a left fielder versus a second baseman versus a DH result in a different WAR, right? Because each position has a different like positional value, and those are all just arbitrary, like 1.3852 for a second baseman and minus 0.951 for a DH. And it's like, come on, like, where are we pulling these numbers from, right? It just feels like a DH is 0.762 less valuable than a left fielder. Like, okay, sorry, we're way off.
The comments on this one are gonna be
bring them to me. I don't care. Oh man, it's getting hot in here.
Let's move on.
Let's get back to this comment though about
yes.
I don't think Chapman's here past the 2-year contract, so he's here for this year and next. Bo Bichette is still our shortstop of the future, barring anything catastrophic.
I think the Matt Chapman signing, or I should say trade, and the acquisition was such a great move by this front office, because you look at Jordan Groshans, and this is the guy that I'm looking at as the Blue Jays' next third baseman.
Okay.
Unless something big happens this trade deadline. Well, all sorts of stuff could happen in the next year and a half. But we have watched Jordan Groshans go from A-ball to Double-A. And struggle to start last year in New Hampshire and totally find it come July, right? And then we watched him make that move up to AAA this year and had a really rough April, dealt with a few minor injuries, and then same thing has happened. Since mid-May, he has been putting up great numbers. So do we see Jordan Groshans maybe brought into the fold next year in 2023 in more of a utility role? Think along the lines of Santiago Espinal. And
not this year. You mean like his Espinal's debut when he was
when
first
Espinal, yeah, I'm talking 2021, right? As the utility infielder who's going to get some reps at third and some reps at second and some reps at short when guys are getting days off, probably see 120 to 140 games, right? Like, he's not an everyday player, but very close. Think Raimel Tapia, that amount of playing time, and then take over for Chapman in 2024. Obviously, these are all just the best laid plans. You can never, we don't have a fucking crystal ball here on the walk-off. We're just a couple of bonehead comedians that love baseball more than we probably should.
And there's the tagline for today's episode.
But the truth is, yeah, I can see one of those guys. I think Aroldis Martinez, just from what he has done at Double-A this year, I think that they're going to leave him at Double-A until next year and probably give him a full year at Triple-A. The kid is still only 21. He has phenomenal power, but he still is swinging like a madman at some of that off-speed stuff and makes him look kind of silly at times. This is a youth thing, right? So if you can give him a little bit of experience, bring him up at 23. Again, us Jays fans are spoiled. So when we hear the age 23, we're like, well, aren't all of our top prospects supposed to be up at 20 and then like
winning home run derbies by the time they're 23? Like,
yeah. But I do think that's the loose-based plan, is that Chapman walks, you bring in Groshans, you give Martinez a little more time, and then maybe you do the same thing with Martinez because Bichette and Vladdy are free agents come 2025, 2026. So, then you'd bring up Martinez and do the same thing as they did with Espinal and hopefully the same thing they did with Groshans. And you've got that constant, steady insertion of youth and talent into this team. That said, I know there's Juan Soto questions in here, and that is going to take a haul. And if you're going to bring in a guy like Juan Soto, and Lord knows the Jays are not opposed to stuff like this. I mean, we just watched the hunt for J-Ram over the last 18 months.
That's true.
Don't think the Blue Jays won't go big game hunting. They might.
I'd rather have Juan Soto than Jose Ramirez. All right, let's move on to question 2 from Wyatt. So again, Wyatt, thanks for your support on Patreon. Comment number 2 is, if the Jays secure the first wild card spot, do you think players on teams like Boston and Tampa Bay will go against their beliefs / original choice to not get the vaccine? This is something a person would have to consider early on, because you need a few weeks in between your shots before you're considered fully vaccinated for flights and entry into Canada. Love your guys' thoughts on these and keep up the awesome work. So thanks for your comments, Wyatt. And that's a great point, is that the Red Sox are not going to be able to just look at the standings on September 31st and go, wow, we're going to have to go to Toronto this week. We better go cave and get those shots finally. Like it's a decision that's going to have to be made by the second week of September.
This is a real matzo ball question here, you know? I don't really know the answer other than if you look at the New York Yankees, the number 1 team in all of Major League Baseball, and the fact that they had several guys on that team, Aaron Judge included, who were very much against the vaccine, go ahead and buckle and get it to start this season because they are well aware of the competition the Toronto Blue Jays are and do not wish to need to play a series in Toronto where they're sitting their top players. And there are some scenarios like that with Boston. So can I see them having a big team meeting September 1st and really putting some pressure on these guys? Absolutely. I think they're going to bring in doctors. I think they're going to bring in some people who are well versed in the vaccine, and they're going to try and convince these guys. That said, it's still very much a personal choice.
No, look, I hear what you're saying. I don't think it's a matter of bringing in doctors and explaining anything to these guys. It's a matter of tough shit, get the fucking shot. We're here to win a playoff game. Like
maybe they do try and strong arm them. I don't know.
I think I feel like we're past the point. We're fucking in year 2.
I feel like if you were going to get the shot, you would have already.
You would have by now, right? Like as a pro athlete, any like questions that you had about it have been answered at this point. Like you've either made up your mind on either side of it, or I don't know. I think
we apologize to anyone watching this as like, oh God, they're getting all political again. Honestly, at this point, put the politics aside. Yeah. Like baseball-wise, this is a pretty big deal, especially if some of these teams need to play in Toronto, right?
Big time. I mean, it's going to affect trade talks, right?
Absolutely.
Like Benintendi there with the Royals didn't come to Toronto, so the New York Yankees are going to have another factor to consider, like whether or not he was a target. That's going to need to be worked out because there's no way Benintendi's playing for the New York Yankees without getting vaccinated. Like, period, full stop. The Yankees are not going to be okay with that. Nope. So
there's rumors that Benintendi is even still in the Blue Jays' crosshairs, and that there is some serious talk that they think that he would get his shot if he goes to a contender, which is even crazier to me.
Yes, then that's a whole nother weird level
but anyways,
I don't know. I kind of get it though. Like for whatever you're gonna fucking tell me to do, like so the team can win. If you're the Kansas City Royals, I'm like, shut the fuck up. We're the Royals, right? I don't know. All right, let's. I just want before we move on here, matzo ball. Not made of mozzarella, despite what the childhood version of myself might think.
Yes.
It is unleavened bread. It is M-A-T-Z-O, not M-O-Z-Z-A. So a little bit of learning for everybody today. a matzo ball made of unleavened bread. So,
because as a kid, I was like, a matzo ball. That sounds delicious.
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's get another matzo ball.
Put it on some sauce and some crust, and let's call her
bread it and dip it in some marinara. We're good to go. All right. Well, we've taken a real left turn, haven't we? Okay, so next one comes in from Darren on YouTube. Says, I was watching Chris Rose and Trevor Plouffe on Jean Boy today, and Trevor Plouffe suggested, in light of the Chris Sale injury, which, by the way, looks like he might be done for the season at this point.
Yeah.
Anytime they say we're hoping he could return this season, it means he probably won't. But in light of that, Trevor Plouffe suggests that the Red Sox could/should take a real long, hard look at themselves over the next few days and consider becoming sellers. Wow, would that ever help out the Blue Jays?
Would it ever? This is a really interesting take by the John Boy guys. You look at the standings, and he's not wrong. I mean, the Baltimore Orioles are, what, 1 game behind the Red Sox currently?
A game and a half back. So here's the wild card standings, Scott, just so you're aware. Obviously, the Yankees, the Astros, and the Twins have the division right now. Tampa Bay, Seattle, and Toronto have the 3 wild card spots. We have the last wild card. And then Boston is 2 full games back of the Blue Jays. Cleveland Guardians are 2.5 back of the Blue Jays, and Baltimore's 3.5 back. Chicago White Sox 3.5 back. So Boston only has a half game lead on Cleveland.
Wow.
2 games back of the Jays, and now they're missing Chris Sale.
By the way, I complained for the first half of this season about the expanded playoffs, and it's not working. Teams don't feel more competitive, I said. Well, holy shit, am I ever eating it now, eh, bud?
Well, it's good. I mean, when we first had that conversation,
race, man.
my comeback to that was we'll see at the trade deadline. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I think that's the time where we'll see whether or not this experiment worked. And, we're 2 weeks away. So it is... we'll see what happens over the next 2 weeks, but certainly in terms of standings, it looks like some pretty competitive races at this point. So could the Boston Red Sox become sellers? I'm looking at their list of free agents for next year, man. They got a lot of free rentals. Mm-hmm. We've got, so here's the list that I've got pulled up. So we got Chris Sale, free agent next year. JD Martinez, Nathan Eovaldi, Kiki Hernandez, Michael Wacha, Christian Vasquez, Kevin Plawecki. Like, it's quite a bit. There's a lot to sell there. If we look beyond that, I believe in 2024, Jackie Bradley Jr. So if you're looking for somebody with a little bit more than a 1-year rental, Rafael Devers, also 28-year-old third base / shortstop. It's not a crazy idea.
My biggest...
it goes against brand for the Red Sox or the Yankees to be sellers.
My biggest pushback on this is the Boston Red Sox fan base would not take this very well. They are only 2 games out currently. They are struggling. I mean, they were god-awful. I think they've won 1 of their last 11 games going into the All-Star break. There was no one happier for the All-Star break than the Boston Red Sox. I think that when it comes to the Orioles, they are going to be sellers in the end, and it just makes so much more sense for them to be so, as they're about 4 games out, even though they are above 500. Now, the Red Sox, I don't know if they will take that left turn. Logistically, they should. Right? If you're just going to go with the logical move here, the Red Sox probably should. However, there may be more money in it for the Red Sox to try and get into that wild card spot and then deal with it in the offseason. I mean, the Red Sox are big spenders.
I mean, playoff revenue is a good point, right? Yeah. A lot of people in Boston are going to, if they can get some home games, it's big revenue, right? But that means getting that first wild card spot or advancing and hoping for a weird... No, there's no reseeding. So their only way of getting home field advantage at all is that first wild card spot because they're not catching the Yankees.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're a big market team. Would they burn it all
really
down
clear
and
things up here, eh?
and get Juan Soto? Are they?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Let's talk Juan Soto here because that's where the next comment is.
Is that how we're wrapping this up?
If that's all right with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Love ending on Soto.
All right. By the way, Soto, home run derby winner, so tip of the hat to him. Okay, so is a very heated discussion, but still friendly, in Discord about what it would take for the Blue Jays if they wanted Juan Soto. And I think Atkins has to be making a phone call, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't say we're like front runners for Soto, but like I also, crazier things have happened. And I think we're definitely in on Soto, whatever that means. There's probably 12, 15 people in on this, all the usual suspects. So let's just dive in. Juan Soto to the Blue Jays. What does it take?
Takes a haul. One thing to keep in mind when it comes to the Washington Nationals is that they have very clearly stated that they would like big league talent coming back in a trade for Soto. They want prospects that are close to the major leagues coming back for Soto. They also wish to be able to look at their contention window and for those players to sort of fit into it, if at all. I know the package I saw might work from a Blue Jays standpoint would be Bo Bichette, Alejandro Kirk, Aurelvis Martinez, and Nate Pearson. Obviously, all of those guys, other than Martinez, are, major league ready. Bo Bichette, now the big pushback on him is that he is only under control for about as long as Soto is, 2026. So I think he's got an extra year on Soto, and maybe that doesn't fit the window for the Nationals. That said, it's not like the Nationals don't have money. It's not like they didn't just offer him $440 million. So if you look at Bo Bichette, he might not have the same problems with Soto as Soto do with the Nationals. I think Soto won the World Series in 2019 and was like, I always wish to be on a contender.
And that was before he graduated high school. So very young kid.
Yeah, exactly. At 20, he won a World Series, and he went through some of these struggles over the last year and a half, and he's like, I hate rebuilding. I don't wish to be on a rebuilding team. And he looks at the Yankees, and he looks at the Dodgers, and he looks at the Red Sox, and is like, well, they never rebuild. So there is a little bit of that to this as well, right? Whereas he is going to need to give the thumbs up on where he goes, is my guess.
Have you seen Austin Powers?
Of course.
Okay, probably not recently.
I'm old.
So there's like a moment that's always stood out to me in Austin Powers, and it's Dr. Evil, and he's got the world held hostage, right? But there's like time travel involved, so he goes like from the past back to the future, and he's got the death ray or whatever it is, and he's like, leaders of the world, I'm gonna blow the earth up unless you give me $1 million, and it's just like this astronomical amount to him, and everybody's like, yeah, that's like chump change, right?
Yeah.
And then later in the movie, he goes back in time, having learned his lesson that $1 million isn't very much, pulls the same meeting and is like, $100 million. And then they just start laughing, right? Because they're like, it's 1969. That kind of money doesn't even exist yet.
Yeah.
Right? And I just feel like that's how this contract negotiation is going to go with Juan Soto. Like, he's just going to ask for and deservedly so, but like so much money that's like, money doesn't even exist yet.
Yeah.
But that's how much he's worth.
Yeah.
So like, what would you be willing to pay? Fucking anything, man. For real. Anything.
Especially if you look at this Blue Jays organization and you're like, okay, giving up Bo Bichette is a massive, massive pay, as well as Alejandro Kirk, obviously. But you know what? Danny Jansen is the starting catcher on this team. And yes, obviously, we would really miss Kirk's bat, but Soto's bat sliding in there instead is pretty great. Gabriel Moreno has already shown that he is a big league catcher Yes, he should be developing in the minors for at least the rest of the season. He should be working on his power stroke, but he still put up great numbers with the Blue Jays, and he did make some bonehead plays defensively, and yeah, he's 22, right? Like, he's still a kid. You look at Bo Bichette leaving, there are some really good shortstops. It's the one thing that this front office has done well is stock the minor league system with truly good shortstops. Jordan Groshans is a natural shortstop. So maybe you look at all, wins above replacement, and you start doing the math, and you're like, how do we make this work with Soto losing all these wins again above replacement? Well, you almost need to take what the replacement for Bo Bichette would be doing with wins above replacement. It all is going to even out. I don't think the Blue Jays are in on Juan Soto seriously. Obviously, they're going to kick the cat on him, if you will, to steal your phrase.
The cat, yes.
It's a haul. It would be a haul.
I would just like to point out two things. First of all, Juan Soto, as impressive as his numbers have been, he's done it on the Washington Nationals. So his numbers in this Blue Jays lineup is going to be better. He walks, 400 times a year? You can't just keep walking him when Vladdy's up next.
I mean, let's be serious, man. You put Juan Soto between Springer and Vladdy, that's insane. That's insanity.
Yeah.
He's going to crush. There's nowhere to put him.
His numbers are going to be absolutely absurd.
There's nowhere to put him.
Second point I want to make, I don't think Nate Pearson has, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, he's always welcome on the show if he ever wants to come talk, vent about Charlie Montoyo. I don't think Nate Pearson has any trade value. Any. I think the only value he has is to this fan base in a like nostalgic kind of a way. For us, he's our like one guy who's like, ooh, the fireballer, right? Like, ooh, a pitcher who touches 100, right? 30 other teams have 4 of those guys in their system.
Until Nate Pearson proves he can stay healthy, I think you might be right. I do think he has a little bit of value. But yeah, you're right. Maybe he's not the piece. Maybe you need to go another. Maybe it's Tiedemann. Maybe it's Roberto.
Yeah, I just mean like if I'm another team and the Blue Jays are like listing off their contributions, like if Nate Pearson's on the list,
Pearson's
I'm like,
not the guy you're after.
I'm like, no, save right. The ink. 100%. Don't write his name down. Like,
yeah, you're 100%.
I'd rather Adam Kloffenstein or CJ Van Eyck or Semro Burst. Like, obviously Ricky Tiedemann's at the top, but if we're just looking for like, a high but not elite level prospect, like there's guys that aren't Nate Pearson. For Nate Pearson's like the only upside to him is he might have 100 miles an hour upside, but we've seen that he's like injury plagued, can't stay on the field. So like, well, no thanks. Like, I still hope he turns out for the Blue Jays. Like, I'm not totally giving up on him. I just mean like in all these trade talks, like as a fan base, it's easy to be like, well, we can't get rid of Tiedemann. Oh, we can't get rid of this guy. Can't get rid of Moreno. But it's
nobody's untouchable.
The fucking other GMs need to win too, right? Like so we have to be a little bit realistic. I think Ricky Tiedemann is going to get a lot of questions asked about him when Ross Atkins is picking up the phone over the next 2 weeks, because that's the number one guy. If I'm a GM on any team, Ricky Tiedemann.
By the way, I do wish to just state really quickly here, when I brought up Bo Bichette as a trade piece in this pseudo Soto deal, that is this imaginary deal that we're making here, I am not advocating we trade Bo Bichette. I just wish to save us some headaches in the comments.
Too. Yes. Yes. People have already stopped watching. They've already typed their comment out and they've hit enter. And
idiots.
Yeah. So unsubscribe.
But you do need to give up talent to get somebody like Juan Soto. Yeah. Not just a little bit of talent. You need to give up a lot of talent. And I don't think that Soto is going anywhere without them, the team that's getting him, negotiating a long-term contract with him to do so.
Yep. Well, I mean, and that's the one other thing about getting rid of Bo Bichette is for a long time, it's been, can this Blue Jays team afford Bo and Vladdy, right? And it's like, that's not even a certainty. So the idea of Bo and Vladdy and Juan Soto is like, that's not going to happen. We're not going to be the New York Yankees. I think that's impractical. So if like you're going to let one guy go on free agency anyways,
yeah,
I don't know. Again, I still like Bo Bichette. I don't want to trade him. I think he's a top 5 shortstop in the league. Okay.
You should have seen. We'll leave it on that, but I do want to just bring up really quickly that you should have seen Discord after the home run derby. It was so funny. So many people were like, "I think I just saw Vladdy mouth the words." I wish you on the Toronto Blue Jays to Soto. I'm like, yeah.
He crossed his fingers and he closed his eyes and he mouthed it and then he threw a coin in the fountain and it was magical. Okay, I wish him onto the Blue Jays as well. All right, let's leave it there.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. We really appreciate all of the interaction that you always give us, all the love you always give us. This walk-off community has really become a beast of its own, and we really appreciate everybody. You can follow us on Twitter at Walk-Off Podcast, Instagram, the Walk-Off Podcast. Free link to the Discord is in the show notes. All the best, everybody. We will see you Friday.